would you be very kind, actually just give us a bit of a Janet and John explanation of what has actually happened? Because I have to say, watching an awful lot of the reports over the weekend, it's been incredibly confused over who's responsible and who's claiming what.
I mean, how long have you got? Because this goes right back to 1948 and the first Arab-Israeli war. We could talk about it for an hour and still not cover every issue. But, you know, Israel and Lebanon have had military disagreements in 1978, 1982, 2006. But really, this escalated massively on October the 7th and 8th, when, in response to Hamas's attacks in the south of Israel, Hezbollah swung in behind them and started launching rockets into Israel from the north of the Israeli border. And at the weekend, we saw rockets that clearly, you know, tragically hit those that football match that children were playing in, and 12 of them were killed. The issue Israel really have is that between sort of the 2006 war, where they were forced to stop after just a week by international pressure, Hezbollah have had the chance to build up their forces in the south of Lebanon. Now, there's a UN resolution from 2006 that says that everything south of the Litani River in Lebanon should be demilitarized. And obviously, Hezbollah have completely ignored that. And they've built a very substantial rocket arsenal in the south of Lebanon that forces this response, whatever it is, from Israel. Now, we're talking in numbers. Since 7th of October, they've fired 7,000 rockets into Israel. And in return, Israel has already struck 11,000 targets in Lebanon, potentially reducing Hezbollah's forces from 2,000 down to around 500, and forcing 60,000 plus people to flee their homes. So it's a pretty dire situation.
Absolutely. I mean, on both sides. But again, you know, this was something that Hezbollah launched, you know, very, very soon after October the 7th. I mean, almost immediately, taking advantage of the chaos. This was an attack, you know. Most of us, I think, looking from outside, say, you know, sort of out of the blue from Hezbollah. But there has been this concern because Hezbollah is so much bigger, so much better armed than Hamas has ever been. Again, both, along with the Houthi rebels and others, armed by Iran, that this is sort of a proxy war between Iran and Israel. And the big concern is, at what point does it erupt into a actual war between Israel and Iran? And that's the big concern. And that's why we see the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, and others, who says, look, the evidence has been shown around the world that, you know, that this is a Hezbollah rocket, but there's some concern about maybe it wasn't actually aimed at these children, particularly because actually the children who died in this particular area is actually Arab. Rather than Jewish, and it's thought that wouldn't have been a likely target for them. And everyone seems to be looking for sort of an out for there not to be a ratcheting up of the retaliatory strikes.
It was unquestionably a Hezbollah rocket. You know, there's been enough open source reporting to suggest exactly what kind of rocket it was. And you've got to remember, Hezbollah are rowing back hard on this one. They initially took credit for it and then rowed back immediately because it was the Druze community that got hit. And there's a significant Druze population. I think Lebanon's about 5% Druze. And clearly that's a huge PR fail for them to have killed Arab Druze rather than Jews. Yeah. When we look at escalation risks, there aren't actually that many options on the table. So I was in Gaza just last week. I got back on Friday. I was chatting to an Israeli tank commander, and he was telling me that they're actually low on main armament ammunition. So they've got loads of coax machine gun ammunition, but the actual main big gun on the tank, they're running out of rounds. Now, are Israel rationing in Gaza in preparation for an assault into Lebanon, or are they just running short? We don't know. But the rockets that Hezbollah have pre-positioned in the south of Lebanon are a real problem for Israel because they're dotted in people's homes. They're spread out all over the region. They're not concentrated in any one place. And actually, if they fire them all at once, they could quite easily overwhelm the Iron Dome. And then we're talking about skyscrapers in Tel Aviv on fire. You know, so this is a huge escalatory risk for Israel. What I expect to see is significant uptick in airstrikes. I mean, we've already had 11,000, so it's not as if there's.
But this is almost the forgotten war. Is there been so much focus on Gaza, and meanwhile, again, and you know, people being displaced and forcibly told you need to leave your homes in Gaza, and yet Israel, northern Israel, tens of thousands of Israelis have been forced to leave their homes, and of course in Lebanon as well as a result of this rocket fire going back and forth over the border. But very, very little coverage of it.
Yeah, and it's funny because Gaza for Israel is really just a sideshow. It's not the main effort in any shape or form. They're ringed by Iranian proxies. They've got Hezbollah in the north, elements of Hezbollah in Syria. They've got the Houthis in Yemen. They've got Iraqi militias funded by Iran in Iraq itself. And this is a deliberate strategy by Iran to put Israel in a chokehold. Gaza is not an existential threat for Israel, but actually potentially these Iranian proxies in other countries really could well be.
Do you think, just finally, do you think there is a risk that this could explode into an all-out war, or do you think that there are just so many countries that will try and stop that, but also Hezbollah themselves may not want that?
Yeah, I think everyone's trying to walk this back at this point, but obviously Israel has got this track record of replying in huge force. We saw with that and the strikes.
Well, as I would expect our country to.
Yeah, and I think Israel have to weigh up the risks of those pre-positioned Hezbollah rockets versus the rewards of launching a ground invasion. And at the moment, I would be surprised if we saw a ground invasion. What I'm expecting is a strike on somewhere like Beirut airport, where Hezbollah have some key assets stashed away. I think
sticking to military targets, that would be the key. Andrew,
exactly
so appreciate you joining. I'm sure my audience appreciated that explainer as well. Really, really appreciate that. Andrew Fox, Research Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society.